are going live. Welcome back, everyone. Hello again. My name is Tiffany. I'm the Tipsy Artist. And today we are going to teach you how to paint this adorable painting for Christmas. It is the legendary leg lamp from the Christmas story. So first of all, let's go ahead and talk about all the supplies that we have, because we do have a wonderful painting kit that comes with this that makes it very fun and easy for beginners. So you'll get a really fun box from us. It'll have all your tools here. I've got those laid out here, 3 brushes. And as we go through the process, I refer to these as your mama and your little buddy and your little bit. Okay, and then we also have a permanent marker and then a pencil. I also have some napkins nearby to dry off the brushes, and then a bucket of water. You'll have to get that to wash your brushes out. You'll have some beautiful acrylic paints to use here. These are wonderful, very good quality, high quality paint. So we have that. Place these off to the side here. All right, and then I've got 2 plates here for mixing, so that helps me out. Just paper plates are wonderful. Have some extras. I've got a little bit of a head start here with some titanium white and Mars black, but I'll go through all the paints step by step. Also, what comes with your paint kit is a line art. This is the traceable, and sometimes if you do something custom for me, then you'll have a custom name here or something like that too. So that's also really fun. I did something a bit more generic for the tutorial today, but you get the idea. And I want to do a big shout out to the Smith family today. Merry Christmas. So y'all will be watching this, and it's going to be awesome. So y'all are going to have so much fun. Also, if you want a delightful little beverage nearby, that also makes the process very relaxing. All right, so let's go back to the traceable here. So we've got this, and we have some graphite paper, which we'll use, and then, of course, your canvas. And let's talk about first how to get this set up. All right, so when we are working with our graphite paper here, it'll just come out in a flat sheet. I just do a tape up here at the very top. So you have tape in your kit too. And I usually tape up 1, 2, 3 to secure this up at the very top here. So I'll have that secured down. Important note here, you want to make sure that the dull gray side faces up and that the shiny black side faces the canvas. That's very important, or else it will not transfer. So make sure you have it facing the right direction. And again, just tape up here at the top. Make sure that all of the canvas is completely covered with no exposed areas. That way you can have a transfer wherever you like here. And again, just tape up here at the top. Leave the sides loose, sides and bottom loose. That way you can constantly lift up and check your work as you go. All right, then the line art here. So I make these paint kits to where you can do it either with our paint kit, which we provide. There's an 8 by 10 canvas panel in here, or they are formatted to where they can certainly be centered for an 11 by 14. So that's an option as well. If you're doing this with our paint kit, you'll want to do this with an 8 by 10. So there's typically more of a snug fit with that. So it's not as roomy to center. But what I will point out to you that I learned when working with this line art with the 8 by 10 is that I have a little bit of, in order to get this, you want to basically get this more where it's centered here. And by that I mean you want about equal distance from this side of the end of your lettering, and then about equal to the distance that's left over from this side of the lamp to this side of your lettering. So that was a little bit by feel, but it all worked out. But I just use my fingers to do that. If you have a ruler, that's great. But basically it's approximately an inch. And that is an approximate measurement, but I kind of just do this here, and then I go here, and I can feel that it's about an inch on each side, so that tells me there's equal distance from the edge on both sides. So that will make this look very balanced in the center here. The other thing I want to check is to make sure that I've got a little bit of distance up here at the top, and then a little bit of distance here at the bottom. And so just to give you a visual, I'm going to go ahead and do a fold so you can see basically how this looks. This is how much distance I have here at the base. I can actually have less distance here. So this is what it looks like. If you were to fold it, you're going to see that the line art comes that close to the bottom. And then this is where it lands up here. There's a little bit of overlap. Actually, let me scoot that up so you can see that much more of a fold of the paper over the back. All right, so that gives you good distance from here to here. Then here you can see I had to shift it really far over to the right to get it to be positioned correctly. So here's where my canvas ends, right here. And then I have this much kind of folding over the side here. So that's about an inch there too. So I'm just going to fold that over. But that gives you, again, that's just kind of a guide, general guide. It doesn't have to be exact, but that kind of gives you an idea of what it will look like. If you're somewhere in the ballpark of that, then that's going to be great. All right, so again, here's your little, kind of do this at the end, make sure, you know, you've got nice distance between those two, and then you can kind of just press it all out. If you're really type A, there's always scissors. That way you can really, really see it. But, you know, this is kind of what it looks like. All right, so I want to give a little pause. You can see that. You can also stop the video here and make sure you can see how it looks. All right, so now that we have it all centered where it's going to look great on there, let's go ahead and talk about how we do this process with the tray. So I'm going to start with my pencil next, and then basically every single place that you see lines, you basically just draw right over the top. This is why this is so great for beginners. So I'm just kind of pretending because I've already done the work. I've worked ahead. But basically every time there's a line, and I like using the pencil because I can definitely see the graphite, the lead over the top of here. It's very visible, easy to see. So I come over all of that, work over all the lettering. Helpful hint on the lettering, always make sure that you go around the loops of the letters. So that is critical because if you go inside, you can actually end up closing off the letters, and you don't want to do that. So always be sure on your loops that you always go around those loops. So we got a loop here, 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 and here. So you got to be careful with those. And other than that, just again, continue to follow along. That will leave a beautiful, it'll just look like pencil on your canvas, basically. All right, so let's go ahead and take this off, and I'm going to go ahead and remove this with some scissors here. All right, so we'll place this down. This can be removed. You can just throw this away, or if you're pretty crafty and you want to reuse the graphite paper, you can turn it in different directions and reuse it. That's awesome to do. So I'll place this over here to the side. All right, now the next thing that I did is I went ahead and used my permanent marker here to go ahead and reinforce all of the line work. So this is a point where if you're following along with me, you can certainly just pause the video and stop it, and then just, you know, basically, because I've worked ahead here. So this basically looked like light pencil to begin with, and I want to maintain our trace. I want to make sure that it bleeds through paint. We don't want to lose all this hard work. So I just take my permanent marker and I just go ahead and do a firm line around on top of all those lines that we've already traced. And then this is essentially what it looks like. The other thing that you can do too that I think is very helpful, you know, the shoe is black, so I mean if you want, unless you do a different color shoe, but you can go ahead and work that in with your Sharpie if you'd like, or you can paint it in. So this is up to you. I'm certainly going to come back over this with paint, but I think sometimes it just helps you see that this is going to be all black. So if you do have some black areas in a painting, you can just go ahead and work that in now. So that will be very helpful later on. All right, so now we have a very beginner-friendly canvas to work with here. All right, so our trace is all in place. We're ready to get started with our painting. And so here we go. All right, so using our paint kit here, the very first color that I'll get started with is going to be titanium white. And Let's go ahead and take this off here. You will have, as a brand new tube here, you'll have a silver foil lining on top. You'll have to peel that off so that it will come out with all these tubes of paint here. That's to protect during shipping. So the amount that you want to put down here is, you're going to use quite a bit in this background. So I would definitely start with a nice big fat quarter size dollop of that. So we'll get that going. That's our titanium white. And there's my puppy dog in the background. That's Miss Ira. All right, then we have our primary yellow here. We need just a little bit of that. Let's go ahead and do kind of a full size, but a nickel size dollop of that. Okay. And then, let's do, we've got our black already laid out, but I'm going to go ahead and show you. It's our Mars black. So we don't need that much of that, but you can go ahead and do about another dime size amount of your black there. Then I also want to have a little bit of brown off to the side. So we need to mix our brown. So I'm going to be using some Cadmium Orange. Nice dime size amount of that. Alright, so let's get started with some of our mixing here. So I'm going to be using my Mama brush to start with. Let's go ahead and take a push of our black here, just kind of push into that. Mix that with my orange. This will give me some brown off to the side. We'll need that for later. Alright. Scrape off all the excess. Want to use as much of that as possible. All right, I'm going to go ahead and rinse out now. Spin the brush round and round and round. That helps release that paint, give a little bit of some firm pressure. And then we'll go ahead and dry this off on our napkins here nearby. All right, next up we're going to mix up that creamy color. So I'm going to grab a nice big dollop of the white here, pick up a little touch of that primary yellow. Let's mix that together. That's going to start to create a nice buttery look, but it's quite a bit lighter than it is here in this very bright state. And then I'm just going to barely touch into my black, super tiny amount there, push that in. That will take this to like a khaki color. Let's pull that a little bit closer to the camera there. Alright, so again, there's our khaki color there. Keeping our white nearby, that little touch of brown that we mixed up earlier nearby, so we'll have all of those to work with. Alright, and by the way, we are working in my sunroom studio by the garden in Guthrie, Oklahoma. It's a beautiful day today. And we're so glad you're here, and thank you so much for joining us. And if you do have any questions or comments, please leave them below, and I'll always get back to you right after the class. And if it's on YouTube, I always check those later too. I get little alerts that tell me when a comment's there, so I'll get back to you very quickly. Alright, so now we've got all these beautiful shades to play with here in the background. So I'm going to start with this kind of a creamy tone here, still using my Mama brush. And then I'm going to go ahead and push this on in what looks like the letter X. Using the flat side of the brush, I'm going to hold that brush more over to the side. This gives me a light, gentle hand. And it feels like you make like little crisscross strokes. Back and forth. And then as I work, I'm also going to touch into a little bit of that pure white too. So if you need more paint as you go, feel free to just add more to your plate. So we're working back and forth now between that really pretty creamy tone that we mixed up. Also, I'm going to touch into some pure white, push that back and forth. And then remember how we mixed up that little bit of brown? So I'm going to barely touch into the brown. Do not clean the brush. I just dip right into that brown. And we're going to crisscross that in too. And see how that's really looking very pretty. At first it might be a bit dramatic, like you saw how that looked very much like a line, so I needed to blend that back into the paint, kind of work that in back and forth. And again, lots of repetition here, holding the brush over to the flat side and just work that back and forth. So again, if something does look a little too stark and dramatic and lined in the beginning, remember to just kind of keep feathering it out, working it out, little crisscross strokes back and forth. So I'm going to do that again. See, just like that. That's way too dramatic as it is in the very beginning. So I'm going to continue. I don't let it scare me. I just kind of work right over the top again and just continue crisscrossing it out. And then you get this really nice look there. Kind of looks like an old Italian wall. It's really pretty. All right, so we did all of our trace here with the Sharpie. And we're going to start to add a little bit of water just to kind of make the paint a bit more translucent. And we're going to continue the same stroke right over the top. But again, all I do is I do add a tad more water, just a touch, as I work this through. And you can see it's the same effect, but it is a bit more translucent so that I don't lose my trace, and then that just bleeds through right over the top. That Sharpie's pretty powerful. And that way we don't lose our hard work and we can come back in and touch that up. And then up underneath this, I will be careful around the leg, but I'm going to go ahead and get right up underneath that lamp so that you've got your background that peeks through, and you can add a little bit of water to that, kind of crisscross that out. That way you won't lose your trace there. Now I'm cutting in around the leg, so I'm going to hold the brush differently. So instead of holding it over to the side, I'm going to hold it more like a pencil, so I've got that thin line edge working for me. And I'll use this to cut in around that leg, so just hold it all the way around here. And if you do happen to just barely touch over the top, it's going to be okay, because this is all that black permanent marker, and it will bleed through and you can touch it up later. That's one of the reasons why working this way is so helpful for beginners. So still continuing in here with our little background. A little crisscross here. Now I need a few more touches of that brown to work its way down here, so don't forget about your little touches of brown. Kind of work those in. Don't forget to crisscross it out back and forth. And this is a little bit random, so of course every painting looks a little bit different. And you definitely want to work this in while the other paint is still wet. You have to have that soft transition and soft blend between the two, or else it will definitely just dry brush right over the top. And don't forget about that little bit of water that you can use to help make it just a tiny bit translucent, so that it doesn't get too thick over the top here and you maintain the visual of your trace underneath. Now, some people are extremely heavy-handed with this layer of paint, and if you just really completely cover over this to the point of no return and you just really cannot see it whenever you are done, do not worry, because what you can do with all your lettering is you can actually just cut all this out and reuse your tracing paper, and just make sure that all of this is completely dry, and then you can place that right over the top and position it in, and just do it later whenever you're dry, when all this is dry here, all the background's dry. So that's another way to do this too. And we're just going to continue to work this all the way around. Now this side becomes much easier because there's nothing to interfere with. You're not trying to be careful around any pre-existing trace or anything. Alright, so my leg comes right in there. And then I'll just cut in right underneath the lamp. And then just kind of crisscross that out back and forth. Don't forget about a little touch of brown. Work that back and forth as you go while the paint's still wet. Alright, it's looking really good. Going back to our cut in again, so I want to use the line edge of the brush, and then as I work into the background, turn that brush handle over to the side and let's feather it out. Don't forget your little bit of brown. Again, lots of repetition. Work it back and forth. You can also do just a little bit of pure white in there too. That's a nice look. A little bit of water to help make it more fluid, easier to move around. And when you feel like you're done with your background, of course, remember to kind of maybe take a step back away from it and just make sure you've got a little bit of balance with maybe a little bit of brown that comes in through the background. So I have a lot of fun balance here happening with my brown. The paint's still wet over here. I'm going to push a little bit more brown in over here to bring a little bit more balance to what I have over here on this side. Alright, so I think we are looking good now. Nice balance of all that kind of old distressed wall happening there. And you can see as the paint dries too, that trace is popping out. Now, be careful not to miss this. I almost forgot about it. I'm going to go ahead and rinse out my Mama brush. Mama brush is a little too big to get into that area there. So round and round and round, it's going to clean that off, dry it off. I need to go ahead and use my little bit brush. Added just a little bit of water. Do a little twist. I'm going to go right into that background color, and then we'll just work this right into that little area right in there. Just hold it like a pencil. If you do have a little bit of overlap on your black, which I have a little bit there, you can either wait for it to dry and use your Sharpie to do a little bit of correction. Of course, you can also, I just used a little bit of water, pure water, just to go ahead and do a little lift off. But also black paint later on can also help. Okay, so we have, oops, I got more paint on that. I want to make sure I rinse that out one more time. All right. Okay, so next up, we're going to go ahead and work in this really bright color of our lampshade here. So we'll be working with a brighter gold color, so I'm going to go ahead and pull in my Cadmium Yellow. Just do like a dime-sized dollop of that. We still have quite a bit left of our primary yellow, so I'm going to mix those two together. I'll be using my little buddy brush here. Let's do equal parts on those. Pull those together. It's really pretty and bright. You can also add a little touch of white too. Alright, that's a really pretty color. So here we go with Little Buddy. We're going to go ahead and place this into that lamp. This is our lampshade. So cutting work, we use the lines here, line edge of the brush. And then again, when we're working in the larger section area of this design, then you want to turn that handle more over to the side. If you see some brush strokes, then you want to just feather those out. Crisscross stroke works really great again, just kind of feather it out like that. In this larger area too, you can always come back in with your mama and kind of touch a little bit more with your mama too and feather that out to remove any of those brush strokes as well. And let's feather that out. Alright, so we have a great first coat there. While the paint's still wet, I'm going to go ahead and rinse out. Alright, so while this paint's still wet, I'm going to come back in with a little bit here. And I'm going to go ahead and work into my brown. I'm going to add just a tiny amount of water. Do a little twist here into that paint. We're going to go over the line. This will be brown. All right, and then the same thing that happens here. A little bit of that brown just goes right over the top. Alright, now let's come right back in with a little touch of brown and a little touch of that bright yellow that we mixed up for the lamp. We're going to blend those two together. And we're going to work this right over the top now. let's add more of that golden color right over the top. Work that into it. Let me turn the canvas a little bit here to get better positioning. Alright, so same thing again over here on the other side. Again, added just a little tiny touch of brown to that mix we had earlier. This is that cadmium yellow, primary yellow, and just a tiny touch of that brown. So we're just darkening this up just a little bit, and then adding this here to the other side. Alright, it's looking good. And now let's work that in here in the base. Just kind of do a light drag with that same color right across the bottom. Alright, so it's looking great. Alright, let's go ahead and rinse out, dry off. Come back in with her a little bit of water. Let's go right back into that brown again. Do a little twist to get a nice fine point on the end of the brush. So basically I'm just rotating the head of the brush into the paint. That loads it up, but it also twists the head of the brush into a nice fine point. And then I'm going to go ahead and just reinforce that outside edge with more of that brown. And I'll add just a little tiny bit of black to that too to kind of darken it up a little bit. A little bit of water with this too definitely helps make it a bit more fluid and smooth, helps it move across the canvas. And remember to do that little twist again to get it out to a nice fine point. Go back into the water. A little bit more water again. That really helps it from not having a dry brush effect. Let's do the other side. I'm going to take my mama and go back into that primary yellow and kind of work into that edge just a little bit. Soften that up a little bit. Work at this end and do a little bit of that feathering out. Light, gentle hand. Alright, so a little bit more black now, and then I'm going to work in a little bit more black on the bottom edge here because we're going to be creating a line that the tassels will come from. So this will come all the way across. And this is just our Mars black, and this is our little bit brush, which is just a round tack-on brush. Okay, that is looking good. All right, before we get to the tassels, I'm going to work on the color of the leg next. Okay, so what we want to do, get back to our mama brush here. light golden brown. So I have a little bit of that, but I'm going to need a little bit more. So I'm going to go ahead and use some more cadmium orange now. Nice nickel size amount of that. And you know what, let's grab some more cadmium yellow just in case. I might want some more of that too. I still have white nearby. Let's grab a little bit of black. So I used a lot more orange this time, so I have a much lighter brown. It has kind of a rust feel to it. So let's add a little bit more black. Let's take it to like a, almost like a milk chocolate. Alright, so that's looking really good. I like the look of that. And if you want to warm up some parts of it, you can warm it up with our cadmium yellow. And even a little touch of white too. Can lighten it up a little bit. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and start to place this down into the leg here. Using the edge of the brush to work into the shape. And make sure the end of the brush doesn't get too thick. You want to maintain that thinness so that it's easier to control. Go ahead and do a slight overpaint over the fringe there. We'll work that in here in a minute. Kind of smooth this out with the full side of the brush so there's no brush strokes. And then that gets to be really tiny in there. I'm going to go ahead and scrape off the excess. We want to save the paint. Let's rinse out. Let's go back to our little bit here. Same color. And then let's go ahead and paint in that little section. You might see some brush strokes happening there. We want to feather this out. So I'm going to turn that brush head over to the side. And just kind of lightly feather that out. And work that into the rest of the leg and blend that back in. That's a very light hand and using more of the side of the brush. Alright, so we have a beautiful leg done now. Let that set up a little bit. Alright, next we're going to go ahead and work on this bottom part here. We've got a gray that will come in next. I'm going to add a little touch of white to our black. A little bit of water. So white and black. Creating a charcoal gray here. This is my little bit brush. Smallest brush that we have in the kit here. And I want this little section here to be a charcoal gray. Just underneath that shoe. Go ahead and fill all this in. Alright, that's good enough. And then I'm going to come back in with just a little bit more of a touch of black and fill that in here at the base. And we'll do a soft blend between the black and that gray. But I still want the gray in between the shoe and the base, so you see the difference there. And I'll just do one little black line right through here. Let's have that black line go all the way across there. That's going to create that little pedestal. Alright, so there that is, a little pedestal there. Let's rinse out. Okay. So I've got a little, take a pair of scissors here. I feel like I've got just one little hair that's just driving me batty right there. Hope I got it. I don't know if I did. Because we're going to get into this hosiery, and that is going to start to drive me insane. Okay, better. Okay, so let's see here. Let's go ahead and do the crisscross. This is that fishnet hosiery that we have going on. So we want our little bit brush, and we want like a dark, real dark brown with a little bit of black. So that's looking really good right there. So again, the brown mix is the orange and the black. So it's almost like a teak brown, but a very, very dark brown. And then I want this line to be very thin, so I'm going to do a little twist here into the paint. Let's grab a little bit more black. And also a little bit of water in this really helps too. Just makes the paint much more fluid, easier to use there. And we're going to start with just a little bit of a diagonal stroke here. So just take it all the way across like that. And just tiny little diagonal lines. I'm going to keep doing that little twist so that the line is really tiny. Use a really gentle hand. And you can also help balance and steady the weight of your hand too by resting your pinky here on your canvas. That'll help steady your hand a little bit. So still doing that little diagonal. We're going to keep doing this. All the way down. Remember, if you get a little bit of that dry brush, remember to add a little bit of water back to it. Take that all the way down there. And then we're going to go the opposite direction. So same exact step. Let's re-water here again. Do a little twist. And you can turn it a little bit. I'm going to turn mine to where I can have a better angle. And we're just going to do those diagonals all the way down again, but from the opposite direction. Do that little twist to get a nice thin fine point. And if you happen to go a little bit outside the leg, don't worry, because we're going to do a little nice fine line around the edge. And that'll help kind of give that leg a little bit more polish and finished look at the very end. Now if it goes way, way out, you can also take a little bit of water, clean brush. Kind of do this too. You work quickly, you can get into it pretty quick and lift it off. You can also take a little piece of paper towel and just barely touch down and lift it right off too. Kind of depends on how big the boo-boo is. And there we are at the very end. Isn't that so cool? We have fishnet hose now. I love it. Okay. Now we're going to do that outside line. So I want a little bit more of a black on this. We're going to add a little bit more black. Let's get some water in there. Let's do a little twist. Not too much, but... And then we'll take this all the way around. Alright, so that makes it quite a bit more finished there on the end. Alright, now let me show you what's happening here. I'm having a little bit of a excess water incident. So I'm be very careful. Take my little paper towel here and just barely touch and pick that up. Sometimes it's good for these little mishaps to happen because they happen to everybody and to beginners especially, and then they don't know how to handle it, and then I'm going to show you how to handle it. Alright, so I was getting a little bit, I had too much water in my brush, it hit the canvas and it started to kind of extend out beyond that leg, so I needed to tighten that up just a bit. So I took my paper towels, very delicate, and just barely did a touch to absorb that water, lift it off, and I'm just going to refine that black line right around the edge. Now that's really tight. That looks really beautiful. Okay. Then we're going to finish here on this other side. That's a good looking leg right there. And then I can actually paint over the shoe too. We did the permanent marker in the beginning, but now I can go back over it with the black paint and my little bit brush for a nice, beautiful, painterly texture here over the top. So we're going to completely cover this whole heel. Alright, very nice. Okay, it's looking good. Alright, next up will be our little fringe up here. So again, we can use, this is just black and little bit brush, do a little twist. Add a little bit of water to make it a bit more fluid as we work into this. And we'll just take it down from there, the end of the lamp, and just do little lines. Tiny little lines. The stroke will be very much like what we did here on the fishnet hose. It's that kind of a delicate stroke. Make sure you don't rest your hand down into any wet paint. This is all dry for here, now, so I'm okay. But do be careful of that. And make sure that all this looks like it belongs up here at the top. So I'm going to be a little bit more heavy-handed there. And then this will overlap over the top. Lots of repetition here. And do be careful it doesn't get too thin up here at the top. That's one of the things when I watch beginners paint this. Sometimes they're a little frustrated by how it looks because they put down these strokes like this to begin with and they feel like it looks a little bare. So it just requires more filling in. And then lots of maybe little baby strokes up here at the top. Really tiny little strokes in here. And so if your brush is a little too thick, also just remember that little twist into the paint. That'll get it really thinned out to a super tiny little point there. Alright, that's looking so good. Okay, now I'm going to do a little bit more. Just a little black accent up here. Just a little bit. Alright, very nice. Okay, so we're looking really fabulous with our little leg lamp here. And then I'm going to go ahead and start to work on our little holly leaves. Alright, so I'm going to rinse out. Let's get it all clean. Alright, so in our paint kit here, let's go ahead and use some cadmium green. And a little bit of an option, you can use some bright yellow green if you want, or you can also just use white. So you might want to play with that and see what you like there. So I'm going to show you with the white first. I'm going to grab a little bit of white, push that into my cadmium green. But you definitely want to add either white or the bright yellow to it, because if you try to use the cadmium green all by itself, it has a tendency to be a little too translucent. So you definitely need either the white or the bright yellow green to mix in with that. Bright yellow green is obviously quite a bit brighter. Or you can do all three. All right, now let's twist it out. And we're going to go ahead and work into this holly leaf, so I can still see my design work peeking through here. It's very light, but I can still see it. So it's like little tiny curves, and I just hold the brush like a pencil. Make sure it's very thin on the edge. So again, what's the trick there? We know. Twist it out. Good job. Okay. All right, take it to a nice fine point. And then we're going to go ahead and just fill this in. Same thing over here. When I do fill in, I always try to make sure and turn the handle a little bit more over to the side. That'll help feather out those brush strokes and give me much better coverage over the top. Remember, you can turn this a little bit too to get a better angle. It's going to be easier for me to do this stroke with the canvas coming this direction. Do a little bit of a push too, and then lift off with a light hand as I come around those curves. Holding that brush more over to the side allows a lot more of that paint to just rest right on the surface, and then kind of lightly crisscross that out back and forth and feather out those strokes again. So we have a great foundation there. We still need to do some outline work, but that's going to be a great start. We're going to let that set up and dry a little bit. want to come in with my little holly berries. So I'm going to come back in with my mama brush. Let's rinse out, dry off. Actually going to use the handle this time, this little round part. And let's get some red. Alright, so we'll be using some Cadmium Red. Just a nice dime size, rounded dime size dollop there. And let's go ahead and take the the bottom of the brush actually, and just dip right in and then push right down. So easy. It's a great way to make polka dots. Ta-da! So you can push right into the paint and then push right down on the canvas. And there we go. And you just wipe that off. Alright, now it's time for our lettering and our little outline here. So I'm going to be going back into my black. So let's grab a little bit of water and a little bit of that black paint. Let's not forget our little twist. And I'm going to go ahead and come around the shape. Again, it's kind of a push down and then lift off with a light hand. Especially as we come around those little curves. And the other side, so let's go ahead and turn it just a little bit. That is looking fantastic. Let's go ahead and turn it back. All right, let's grab a little bit more water, go into that black, little twist. And now just kind of a big soft curve and then lift off. Just kind of follows the flow here of the leaf. So start here at the top and then pull down, lift off. Slight curve to that. Start at the top, pull down, lift off. Right, beautiful. All right, now we need to go ahead and do our lettering. And if you're really nervous about interrupting your wet paint here, you can always just let it set up and dry. If you're concerned you have a shaky hand, permanent marker is definitely your friend. You can go ahead and do all this with a permanent marker over the top. You do want to make sure that you are definitely working on dry paint, or else the wet paint will instantly kill a permanent marker, so you have to be careful of that. Alright, so let's go ahead and go back in. I'm going to go ahead and paint mine on. I'm using my little bit brush, a little bit of water, and the black paint. Do that little twist, get a nice fine point. And I definitely have to be careful and not interrupt anything that's still wet here. And I got a loop coming up right there, so what do we say about that? Avoid the loop. So go around it for sure. Good job. You don't want to close off that letter. All right, it's looking really pretty. Get a little bit more water. I do a little tap just so I don't get too much water on there. We have another loop coming up, so let's really go around it. Also notice I'm using my pinky again to help stabilize my hand. Helps keep that steady. That's another great little trick. All right. So lovely. Oh my goodness, it looks so good. All right, I think we are absolutely done. Now all we have to do is just sign our masterpiece. So you can do this with your brush, or you can do this with your permanent marker. This makes it really easy for a beginner. So I'm going to go ahead and just do a little. Ta-da! And we are done. It's a beautiful leg lamp. All right, good job. I'm so proud of y'all. Great work. All right, so it has been a pleasure painting with y'all today. I had so much fun, very relaxing, fun experience. You can do this with me at home, with a group, or just by yourself. We have all kinds of fun painting kits for this process. You can find everything you need at tipsyartist.com. So look forward to painting with y'all again. I had a great day. Y'all have a beautiful day, and I will see y'all very, very soon. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Toodles.